I'm sorry it's taken so long for me to get to this. You've all been waiting so patiently for me to let you know what's happening. But I promise, we're nearly there. So after everything that happened last time, and spotting what I thought was Jenny lurking in that crowd, I made my way back down from the top of the building, climbing the fire escape on the other side to not draw much attention. As I got back onto the street, I could see the throngs of people still gathered around where the hunter had landed. Although the initial shock and terror had died down a bit, there were shouts and yells as people called for space, and I could hear the sirens of an ambulance in the distance. Still shaking, I tried my best to blend in again. There was nothing I could do for the hunter now. Besides, I had a new priority. Glancing around, I looked for any signs of Jenny in the crowd. I was sure it was her. I'd recognized her face, even from way up there. As I surveyed the masses in front of me, I finally caught a glimpse of her, swiftly slipping between a group of onlookers, slinking away from the scene. Heat ignited, spreading fiercely throughout my chest as I remembered them all. Remembered eating my pizza before the world went dark and she left me for dead. Seeing her now, it all came flooding back, clear as day. Sure, she'd changed her outfit, now wearing a large, black coat and heavy boots, but it was unmistakably her. All I could think to myself was, how had she managed to survive this long on her own? As the hate festered within me, she moved further and further into the crowd. Hastily, I set off in pursuit. Truth be told, I had no idea what I was doing. I made the decision based on pure anger. I didn't know what I'd do if I caught up to her. I never thought I'd see her again. But now was my chance to... do what? Yell at her? Steal her things? Give her over to the hunters? God knows. All I knew was that in that moment, I wasn't going to let her get away without confronting her. She was moving quickly, weaving through the crowd as though she'd been doing this for years. I tried to keep pace, maintaining the distance as best as I could, while resisting the urge to run, to charge after her and confront her then and there. All that would succeed in doing would be alerting her to my presence, and my biggest advantage would be gone. Not only that, it would look too suspicious to passers-by, and attract unwanted attention. No, I needed to be stealthy for this. Following her for several streets, I couldn't help but be impressed at how she handled herself. She was walking with purpose, confident, but not enough that it came across as arrogant. If I didn't know any better, I'd have never given her a second glance. I'd have just assumed she's a woman with somewhere to be. She didn't seem like the same terrified, frantic girl I'd met back in the mall who stuck out like a sore thumb. No, she seemed like she was supposed to be here. The further I tracked her, the quieter the streets became, the passers-by becoming fewer and fewer as we left the market for a more industrial section of the city. It became harder and harder to stay concealed as the tight-knit houses were slowly replaced by office blocks and trading estates. The spaces between each building seemed to open up the further we went, making way for patches of greenery to break up the monotony of the concrete structures, and I had to drop back even further than I'd have liked. A couple of times, my breath caught in my throat as I thought maybe she'd have seen me following her. She'd stop randomly to fix her bag, check her hair in a window, or adjust her shoelace. My blood ran cold the first time she did it. She almost turned to face me while digging through her bag for something, almost locking eyes with me. I turned abruptly to the nearest car window, doing my best to obscure my face while pretending to search my pockets for the keys. I waited there, heart pounding in my ears, expecting to hear rapid footfalls away from me as she bolted, recognizing me. But after what felt like an eternity, there was nothing. Just the same sounds of the street as before. Slowly I chanced to glance back over in her direction, pretending to be exasperated at not finding my keys, all the while expecting to still see her staring at me. She was there, only further down the street now, carrying on with her journey, none the wiser. Breathing out a sigh of relief, my heart was pounding slightly as I continued after her. That had been too close for comfort. This happened a few more times. Her stopping to check or fix something, and me trying my best to blend in. Each time she would stop, look around while doing whatever she needed to do, and then move on. At first, I thought it was strange. It didn't register with me initially. After all, she did it so naturally. But after a while, I realised that it was an elaborate way for her to look over her shoulder. A nonchalant way to see if she'd gained a tail without looking paranoid or giving away that she knew that someone was following her. She was clever. I had to admit that. But even with her vigilant checks, she still hadn't spotted me. If she'd seen me, then she'd probably have run. I mean, who could blame her? Wouldn't you if you saw someone you'd left for dead weeks ago following you? We carried on like this a little further, now nearly at the other end of the area of play. By this point, the sun had started to dip between the tops of the buildings, elongating the shadows on the tarmac. I had no idea exactly how long I'd been following her. She'd made several stops at various points, stocking up on food and other essentials. But it must have been a few hours at least. I was getting tired at this point, not sure of exactly how this was going to work, when she took an abrupt right turn into an abandoned-looking industrial unit. The buildings there, mostly warehouses, were long past their prime, disused since the company that owned them went bust. They were large and imposing, derelict shells looming overhead like oppressive monoliths. Stopping at the edge of the street, I peered gingerly around the corner, watching as Jenny made her way into the abandoned estate towards the nearest warehouse. Coming to a stop in front of it, she began to turn to check her bag. One final check before she did whatever she was going to do. Dropping back behind the safety of the brick wall separating me from her, I waited a few seconds until she would be satisfied she was alone. Leaning back around again, I could no longer see her. The space she'd been standing only moments ago was now vacant, as a piece of corrugated metal slowly slid back over a broken window. If I hadn't just seen it move, I'd have been convinced that she'd vanished. There's no way I'd have expected anyone would have been able to move that large sheet, let alone place it back so perfectly. Furtively making my way over, I crossed the street to the warehouse, creeping up to the blocked window. She was in here. Now was my chance. I'd been waiting for this all day. I'd confront her here, where she wouldn't be able to run away again. Gently brushing my hand across the cool corrugated sheet, I pressed my ear close to the metal and listened for any signs of life on the other side. At first, I thought I must have been going mad, as I couldn't hear anything. just the pounding of my heartbeat. Then, after a second, the muffled tap, tap, tapping of footsteps slowly fading away in a soft rhythm on the other side seeped through the metal. Breathing a slow sigh of relief, I relaxed a little. She had no idea I was following her. She couldn't have. That would have been the perfect opportunity to lose me. No, the way those footsteps sounded, she was none the wiser. I waited there for a few more seconds, pressed close against the corrugated metal, waiting for the footsteps to fade slightly more. By no means was I an expert in warehouses. I'd only ever set foot in one as part of a work experience trip for school. But the one thing that I did know was that they were large. And one thing I know about large empty buildings is that sound travels, no matter how careful you try to be. I hadn't followed her all this way just to mess up now. However, truth be told, I still had no idea exactly what I planned to do. I'd pull back the metal sheet, sneak in, and... then what? I wasn't entirely certain what had driven me to follow her in the first place. Initially it was rage. At least that's what I'd like to think. A chance to get back at her for screwing me over in the mall, what felt like months ago. As much as I hated to admit it, her betrayal had cut me deeper than I cared to realise. She was the first person I'd met in this game who hadn't instantly tried to kill or catch me. I'd gone out of my way to help her. Hell, I'd even allowed myself to imagine that we might make it through this thing together. I'd allowed myself to be vulnerable, and she'd taken advantage of that. But the more I thought about it, it wasn't the betrayal itself that stung the most. It was the fact that I never saw it coming. Never suspected that anyone would be capable of such malice. I should have just left her to it. Left her there in that clothes shop to fend for herself. The dull ache from my wounded calf wormed its way up, reminding me that if it hadn't been for my naive, trusting nature, maybe my leg would still be fine. Hell, maybe none of the things that had happened to me would have happened. Maybe if I'd just been a callous, soulless machine from the start, I'd be sitting pretty with a working leg, solid chest, and a full complement of fingers. But there was something else there too. Another feeling I couldn't quite put my finger on at the time. It felt stupid, but like I said, she'd been the only person I'd met throughout this entire ordeal who hadn't tried to kill or capture me. She was the closest thing I'd had to a friend. Shaking the thoughts away with a sharp exhalation, I dragged my attention back to what I needed to do. Her footsteps were barely audible anymore. She must have been at the other end of the warehouse by now. Either way, it was far enough away that the chances of her hearing me were minimal if I was careful at least. Slowly, suppressing a tremble in my hand, I started to pull at the metal sheet, all the while dreading a squeal or a creak that would echo throughout the desolate halls of the warehouse. It moved easily enough, hardly held in place at all. I'd managed to slide it along about a foot, when the far corner caught against the brick of the warehouse with an awful grinding scrape. My stomach dropped and my blood ran cold as I froze in place. I stood there, like a statue, not daring to move, not daring to make another sound. My ears pricked, straining for any sounds, listening for the footsteps starting up, louder and faster, as she heard my attempt to enter the warehouse and bolted. I stood for what felt like an eternity, still as a statue, holding that sheet. Depending on where she was, I'd be in plain view if she looked out of the window. The distant footsteps had long since stopped echoing around the concrete structure, and the silence was deafening. Holding my breath, I waited, ready for the inevitable. I imagined Jenny hearing that sound, turning around and seeing me there holding that sheet, before disappearing at a charge through the abandoned shell and bursting out into the quickly disappearing twilight. I'd never be able to find her again. After what felt like an eternity, the soft sound of clicking shoes against concrete started up again. To my relief, they were calm and soft, just like before. Silently chastising myself, I waited, not daring to move just in case. The soft clicking continued for a few seconds before it transformed into a gentle metallic clang, still maintaining that same calm rhythm. The reverberating sound seemed to rise higher and higher throughout the structure, filling the abandoned space. Seeing this for the opportunity that it was, I slowly started to move the sheet again, hoping against hope that if I made another sound, it would be masked by the clanging metal. Shakily, I managed to move it another 6 inches, giving me just enough space to crawl through if I was careful. I didn't want to risk pushing it any further, not after that last scare. Peering through the opening, I tried my best to make out what lay beyond. It was dark inside, the meagre light from where I was standing barely penetrating the gloom. But from what I could make out, the place was bleak. Where the racking should have been, there was now just a large empty space, hoarding dust as time had passed it by. Glancing up towards the roof, missing panels greeted my eyes in several places, torn away by the elements a lifetime ago. But even with the evening twilight seeping in through those gaps, I could hardly see anything. This was less than ideal. I needed to be careful. The last thing I wanted was to be bumbling around in the dark. Slowly, I squeezed myself through the hole, working my arms and shoulders through one at a time. I didn't want to get careless and risk catching myself. The echoing footsteps masked any sounds as I slipped through the open window, landing in a heap on the hard concrete beneath. Getting to my feet, I attempted to slide the metal back into place, being extra careful this time, ensuring no part of it would grate up against the wall. It moved slowly, taking away the last of the light as it did so, leaving me alone in the gloom with only the twilight of the missing patches of roof. The footsteps overhead seemed to come to a calm, controlled stop. As I stood in the gloom listening, they were replaced by the soft sounds of shuffling movement. It sounded like they were coming from the other end of the warehouse, the far right-hand corner. Faintly, through the gloom, I felt like I could make out a soft glow. Dim, as though it were being smothered somehow. Straining my eyes, I could just about make out the flickering amber light, about 2 stories up. That had to be her. She must be up there. She was clever, I told myself. If I'd not followed her, I'd have never thought that anyone could be hiding in here. With my eyes now beginning to adjust to the lesser light, I glanced around, trying to discern a way up to the source of that glow. Again, I couldn't see much, but there, illuminated in a patch of twilight, I caught sight of something in a layer of dust. A disturbance. A footprint. There were a few of them, seeming to move between the faint shafts of light, snaking their way to the other end of the warehouse. That was it. Slowly, I started to make my way over to the closest one, careful to place my weight down gently to avoid making a sound. It was arduous, and I felt like the short distance took an unimaginable time to cross, but I was silent. I followed the trail, sneaking from twilight patch of dust to twilight patch of dust as I delved deeper into the abandoned shell of the warehouse. As I neared the furthest patch, my eyes caught sight of something glinting in the darkness. It looked like metal. It took me a moment to figure out what it was, but then it clicked. The handrail of a staircase. That must have been where she'd gone. That was what had made the clanging sound. My heart beat faster as I approached it. Reaching out and feeling the cool metal under my skin, it was clean, free from the thick dust that covered the rest of the warehouse, as though it had seen recent use. Trembling with nervous anticipation, I slowly tried my foot on the metal steps beneath. A moment of doubt welled in me as I half expected them to screech out when I lowered my weight, no matter how careful I was. To my relief, they hardly made a sound. Using the handrail to take the majority of my weight, my ribs burned in protest as I shakily made my way, slowly moving from step to step. I was so close now, and although it meant moving at a snail's pace, I'd come too far to fail. The pain in my chest gnawed at me, growing more and more intense with each step upwards. Although nowhere near as bad as when I'd initially been in the crash, my ribs were still far from being in working order. After a while, the stairs seemed to level out into a platform which led to a single door. This must have been the space they used for an office before this place was abandoned. Cutting through the darkness, I could make out the flickering of the amber glow again. It seemed to seep out from the door ahead, dancing tentatively from beneath it. Edging towards it, I could see it was ajar. Barely a finger width, but still, not locked. Soft sounds from beyond were escaping out through the tiny gap. Sounds that it took me a moment to place. Muffled movement, like something shifting around on fabric. And another sound that I'd never expected to hear. Music. Some kind of upbeat pop or something similar. Listening for a second, it seemed sporadic, interspersed with someone talking over it. She must have been watching something on her phone. It was quiet enough that the sound wouldn't travel far in the empty building. My spirit soared at that revelation. If she was comfortable enough to watch videos, she must have been confident she was alone. Not that I blamed her. I thought back to my time on that roof of the supermarket, and how bored I'd been with only my phone for company. Carefully creeping closer to the door, I drew level with it, leaning against the outer wall as I peered through the gap to get a better look inside. It was definitely an office space, or at least it had been. But now, rather than desks and computers, it was filled with what looked like the belongings of a squatter. What looked like a gas lamp, the source of the flickering glow, appeared to be sitting in the middle of the floor. Its light poured out into the room and under the door, coating everything in a warm amber luminescence. At the far end, I could see a rolled-out sleeping bag flushed to one of the corners. It looked recently disturbed, with a plain, fresh pillow at one end. Yeah, she was definitely living here. I kicked myself for not thinking of something like this myself. It was perfect. Out of the way and quiet. I couldn't help but wonder how long she'd been here, or if she'd had a visit from the organisers like I had when they didn't like my hiding spot. White-hot rage filled my chest again as I remembered that masked brute and how he'd taken my fingers. No, I thought. I bet they haven't paid her any attention at all. I bet she's had it plain sailing ever since the mall. The soft sound of the upbeat pop music still poured through the doors as my fingers clenched into fists, a jarring juxtaposition from the anger boiling in me. Staring at the wooden door, unmoving in the darkness, again I asked myself the question, what exactly was I going to do here? I wasn't going to hurt her. At least, I didn't plan on it. Not unless things went wrong. Sure, I was angry, but I wasn't a monster. I'd seen too much hurt and death already. But I needed to vent this anger somehow, this rage she'd instilled in me. I wanted to scream at her, to shout and yell at the top of my lungs till I had nothing left. I wanted to unleash all the fear and terror that I'd been reduced to feeling ever since she betrayed me into a torrent of dagger-like words, cutting her as deeply as she'd cut me. I wanted to see her reduced to tears, to make her feel every possible ounce of sorrow for what she'd done. Closing my eyes, I took a deep breath, steadying my shaking hands. She was in there, and if I was quick, I'd be able to burst into that room before she even knew what was happening. Readying myself, I counted down backwards from 3, letting out a slow breath before pushing off hard on my right foot and slamming into the unlocked door. It swung violently, slamming against the wall with a reverberating bang, and the full extent of the room came into view. Illuminated by the flickering lamp, at the opposite end of the room to the sleeping bag, was a window, the glass of which was covered in a thick grime that seemed to block out all light from outside. Underneath were what looked like several tins of food, varying from beans to soups, even a chicken, all neatly stacked in front of a tiny gas-burning stove. Empty cans were piled in the nearby corner, obviously where she'd been keeping her trash. The dull concrete of the office floor was exposed, the dust and debris long since swept away. It was clear, all except for that lamp and a small glowing screen of a phone propped up in the middle of the room. It was just a few feet away, lying on the floor, happily playing its music away to itself. The one thing I'd been expecting to see, the one thing that, to my horror, I still could not see, was Jenny. Panic started to rear its head, and I began to whirl around on the spot, hoping she'd not somehow slip past me, before I felt a severe burning pain in the back of my head and everything went dark. Stars popped brightly in my failing vision as I fell hard to the ground. No more than a second after I'd landed, a crushing weight fell on me. I could feel the hard bones of her kneecap pressing down uncomfortably, crushing my spine, squeezing the wind out of me. My ribs burned under the pressure, feeling like they were about to snap all over again. I tried to scream, but I couldn't draw enough breath. All that managed to escape my lips was a low groan. Trying my best to struggle against this oppressive weight, I reached back. My arms were uncoordinated, flailing back and forth, ignoring me as I tried my best to maintain control. There was a searing pain in my shoulder as something grabbed my wrists, wrenching them back and pinning them behind me. What the hell had happened? How had I gone from sneaking up on Jenny to this? My head swam as I tried to shake myself out of the daze. I had to get up. I had to get out of here. Panic filled me as I tried my best to muster up my strength, to try and shake off whoever was kneeling on me again. I made to twist and surprise them. I could feel the fog clearing slowly, but this would by no means be a graceful escape. Just as I was about to wriggle again, the feeling of cold metal digging into my temple and a soft click of a hammer being pulled back ready to fire made my stomach drop, and all fight left me. Bet you weren't expecting this, you fucking asshole. Again, my shoulder burned as my arm was wrenched back and something tightened painfully around my wrist, locking it to my ankle. You hunters are all the same, not a clue what you're doing. What, do you think I didn't see you following me back there? You couldn't have been more obvious if you tried. The voice spat as pain flared up in my other wrist, which was pulled back hard towards my other ankle. Rage welled up again, breaking through the pain, burning bright hot. It was Jenny. It had to be. I recognised her voice. She'd got the better of me again. And this wasn't how this was supposed to happen. I tried to scream in fury, letting my rage take over, but a slurred moan was all I could manage, my tongue refusing to obey the orders of my dazed mind. Don't worry, I'm not going to kill you, she said, giving me a swift jab to my broken rib. The pain was excruciating and caused those stars to return to my vision for a second. As much as I'd love to, the rules say I can't kill you. But they didn't say anything about leaving you tied up here for a few days. That was it. I'd had enough of this. I was supposed to be the one in control here, not her. I was supposed to be the one making threats. That fresh spike of anger cleared my thoughts enough for me to gain at least some control back. The daze of whatever she'd hit me with slowly ebbing away just enough. I'm not a hunter, you moron. It's me, David. You know, the guy you royally fucked over at the mall. She let out a high-pitched laugh at that. I could tell she didn't believe me, assuming that I was a hunter and that this was a trick. But I felt her weight shift on my back as she leaned closer to get a better look at my face. As much as it hurt, I tried to turn my head as much as I could. I wanted to look her dead in the eyes. The triumphant expression on her face faltered as she looked into my face. There was a twinkle of something there. Recognition. Maybe regret. Even with the beard and the grime coating my face, I could tell she recognized me. She seemed almost shocked for a second, before that expression settled back across her face again and she spoke. Whoa. It really is you, she uttered. Whoa. That's it, really. That's the best you can do. You left me for the hunters, left me for dead, and all you can say is, whoa. I exploded, feeling the sweet release of pent-up anger seeping out. She turned away, a sheepish look on her face as I glared. What's the matter? You look shocked. Surprised to see me? She turned back to me, that mask of confidence slipping slightly as she did so. Look, about the mall. I know you must be angry. You're damn right about that, I interrupted, cutting her off. She glanced down at the floor, sighing before continuing. I'm sorry, but I thought you were lying about the hunters and you had a plan to get me out of the game. I thought I'd get you before you got me. How was I to know this was all real? That got to me. I mean, really got to me. The red mist descended again. How many nights had I replayed that moment in my head? Her running, shouting, leaving me to die. And now she was standing there, right in front of me, smug as ever, acting like a sorry could fix anything. How are you to know? Oh, I don't know, maybe because I fucking well told you. It was literally one of the first things I said when I met you. One of them had literally tried to kill me moments before. Was that not good enough? You could have been lying for all I knew, trying to scare me and get me to quit. All I knew was that I needed the prize money. She looked away, out towards the window, a sadness creeping into her voice as she continued. Not that it matters anymore. I don't even think there is any money. Obviously not. But hey, you didn't know, I said sarcastically. She lifted her knee off my back. Cool air immediately filled my lungs, extinguishing the burning sensation that had been building there. Slowly walking over to the other end of the room, she stared at the window with a glazed look in her eyes. As soon as her weight was gone, I tried to get free, but the bindings she put on my wrists and ankles dug into my skin as I fought against them. Glancing back over my shoulder, I could see that they were tightly zip-tied. None of this is what we thought it was, Jenny mused, snapping my attention back to her as she stared at the grime-coated window before sighing and slumping into a sitting position, looking at me again. If I could go back and warn my past self about all this, then I would. If I could go back and stop myself leaving you in the mall, I would. But I can't. I never meant to leave you to die. I thought I was just getting rid of another player was all. I had no hard feelings towards you. You never even looked back, I spat. You hit me, shouted that hunter, and ran. You left me there to fend for myself, and you didn't even glance over your shoulder. Her gaze dropped to the floor again. All I can say is I'm sorry. As soon as I realized what was happening, I felt terrible. Your face kept haunting me as I slept. But all I could think about was how I'd not seen you in any of the nightly updates, so you must have been okay. Well, alive at least. She looked over to me, no doubt taking in the makeshift bandages I'd wrapped around my various wounds. Tears lining her eyes as the extent of what had happened to me since we last met dawned on her. I saw her eyes dart to my hand, lingering on my missing fingers, before shying away again. Her expression cracked, catching me off guard slightly, although she turned away to avoid me seeing it. Something about her, about the way she was acting, bothered me. She didn't seem like the same Jenny from the mall, the same terrified youth who'd left me for dead. As much as I didn't want to think it, I couldn't help but feel like she'd changed. She seemed genuinely sorry. I'd go with alive. I've not been okay for a long time now, I said sharply. I don't think any of us have. You're the only other hider I've seen since all this started, and you're in as good a state as me. Oh yeah, I'm sure you're really banged up. Must be awful for you. You're not the only one who's had it rough since that first day, she said, seeming almost distant as she lifted her shirt slightly. White patches of gauze, awkwardly applied, covered the red snake-like gash that seemed to track its way along from her waist up to her chest, snaking its way across her like a shallow crimson valley. It looked aggressive, weeping slightly in places where the scabs had broken from her movements. As much as I tried to stop myself, tried to hold onto the rage, I couldn't help but wonder about how she'd got it. It looked too clean to have happened by accident, the cut too neat and seamless. Could a hunter have given it to her? Or maybe even that brute in the mask? My thoughts lingered on my own bandage-wrapped fingers, and a lump rose in my throat as I imagined what she must have gone through. Tearing my eyes away, blinking frantically so she couldn't see them start to water, I tried my best to compose myself. Dropping her shirt, she held her face in her hands and burst into tears. "Oh God, how is this happening? I just want to go home." At that moment, seeing her broken and vulnerable like that, it was like looking back at myself. She was absolutely terrified, just like me. She'd made a mistake, but since then, her life had been a living hell just like mine. As much as I hated it, at that moment, I could understand why she'd left me at the mall. She was just a stupid kid, making split-second decisions without fully understanding the consequences of her actions. My thoughts were drawn back to all of the times throughout this game where I'd been alone, terrified, expecting a hunter and death to follow at any moment. I'd made some stupid decisions in the heat of the moment, my latest one resulting in the death of a hunter. We weren't so different. Not deep down. Not really. She just wanted to survive, to make it through this god-awful game and get home, exactly like me. As much as I'd felt like it this entire time, we weren't alone in all this. None of us hiders were. Sure, we all felt like it, trying our best to survive. But we didn't have to be. Not anymore. As much as I hated her, as much as I didn't want to trust her, I didn't want to do this alone anymore either. I'd been bouncing from disaster to disaster, gradually getting more and more tired, more and more injured, and my resolve was starting to waver. Something told me that maybe she felt the same way. We sat there in awkward silence, Jenny quietly sobbing into her hands as thoughts whirled in my mind. After what felt like several minutes, I cleared my throat to get her attention again. She raised her head slightly, watery eyes watching me over the tips of her fingers. "Look, Jenny." I didn't really know what to say to her, my mind still fighting back the urge to just shut up and stop talking. "I'm really sorry about what happened to you. I can't imagine what you've had to go through since we last saw each other." She wiped away a tear, suppressing a sniffle, watching me as I spoke. "And while I'm still really pissed off about the whole mall thing, I know what it's like to go through all this alone." Her eyes grew curious now, my undoubtedly expected outburst of rage not having manifested itself. "Look, what I'm trying to say is, maybe we could try and help each other, watch each other's backs. And I mean actually watch each other's backs this time." She paused for what felt like an age. I could see her mind whirring as she mulled over what I'd proposed, weighing up her options. I sat there expectantly, aware of the stinging in my wrists intensifying as my legs were getting tired, pulling harder against the zip ties. Her expression shifted as she looked me in the eyes, her voice cracking slightly as she said, "I'm sorry, David. I really am. I really want to, but I don't think we can." My heart sank, and a flash of anger I'd been trying so hard to suppress bubbled its way back up. Fighting to maintain my calm tone of voice, I tried my best to reassure her. "Sure we can. We did well together in the mall. Well, before..." Her eyes seemed to glisten at that, as though she was trying her best to hold back a torrent of tears. "That's just it though. The mall. How would we ever be able to trust each other with that hanging over us? You'd never trust me because you'd be waiting for me to betray you, and..." She trailed off. "Look, Jenny, it won't be like that, I promise. Come on, please. Just let me out of these zip ties and we could talk more about it. I promise it won't be like that. That was a mistake. At the mention of the zip ties, her expression hardened, the sorrow and fear now nowhere to be seen. Oh yeah, sure. And what's the first thing you'll do when I untie you? I can hazard a guess. Nice try, David. What? No, Jenny, I promise I won't do anything. You have my word. My stomach dropped. This was going wrong. Really wrong. Yeah? And how exactly do you expect me to believe that? You stalked me back here, followed me all the way from the market, ready to do God knows what, and now you expect me to just let you go because you gave your word. I don't think so, David. I was about to bite back, to argue my case, when a sound grabbed both of our attention. It seemed to emanate from the centre of the room and my pocket at the same time. A cool fear washed over me as the realisation set in. I knew what that sound meant. I could tell from the look in Jenny's eyes that she knew too. Bringing our conversation to an abrupt end, she walked over to her phone, lifting it with shaking hands before opening the app. She crossed the room, propping her phone against the wall nearest to me so that we could both see the screen, before sitting down a little distance away. The all too familiar black of the screen sat there in silence for a few seconds, before bursting into life, revealing the unwelcome scene of that stage, with the podium in the middle. A chill crept along my spine as I knew what was coming. As usual, the bird-masked man appeared, moving around the screen with his jovial dancing and sing-song voice. The show followed the normal schedule. People were brought out, tied to the stage, then gunned down by that masked psychopath. The routine executions had almost lost their shock factor now. This time, though, there was a special segment. Shout-outs, he called it. I watched in horror as the screen was filled with the CCTV images of the hunter that had chased me, dangling from that rooftop, her legs flailing in the air as I tried to pull her up. Jenny's face was a picture of shock as she watched on in horror. Through the screen, she could see my terrified expression as the woman slipped from my grip, screaming as she fell. A single tear rolled down Jenny's cheek as she turned to me, a lump in her throat. David, I'm so sorry. I never knew that was you up there. I thought she just slipped. Yeah, I killed her. I was too weak to save her, was all I could muster, staring at my hands as the memories brought fresh, hot tears to my eyes. It looked so much worse than I remembered it. I could see the sorrow in Jenny's eyes as she watched me, slumped there, defeated. I must have looked pathetic. Let's watch a slow-motion replay of that one, sang the bird-masked man. The glee in his voice was unbearable. The clip started up again. The hunter dangling from the rooftop, me leaning over her, both of us terrified. David, She stopped, unable to find the words. I stared at the floor again, just wishing the clip would stop playing. I just wanted to forget. I heard a scuffling noise next to me as Jenny moved, but I didn't care to look at her. The scuffling was replaced by a rustling, and then a light sensation in my wrists and ankles. Pulling myself out of my self-pity, I tried to move them again, wondering what was going on. They moved freely, the angry red irritation around them the only indication that they were tied in the first place. Look, if you meant what you said earlier, then maybe we can work together, to get through this, came Jenny's voice from behind me, sounding confident again. Jenny, thanks. The voice of the birdmast man starting up again broke through the moment, and our attention was drawn back to the screen yet again. Well, we're down to the final 10 now, folks. Congratulations to all you lucky guys and gals who've made it this far. It's been a hell of a ride, that's for sure. But what say we take it up a notch? Another chill crept its way along my spine. How could they possibly make this any worse? With so few of you left now, I feel like we need to make things a little more interesting, he said, dancing around the stage again. In my opinion, we've had too many rules in this thing from the get-go. But there are only 5. I hear you cry. He mimicked a concerned gesture, raising his hand to his ear as though hearing shouts of an imaginary crowd. Well, yes, but that's a lot to remember and can so often be confusing. So let's make it easier. Starting now, there are only 2 rules. Rule number 1. All contestants must have their phones with them at all times and their locations on. Rule number 2. Once you're in, you're in. He brought his hand to his chin, rubbing it in a mocking, thoughtful manner. That should do it. I think we should all be able to remember that. But I still feel like we're missing something. After all, we're near the finale now. Ooh, I know. He paused for a second. I assumed for dramatic effect. All teams are now disbanded. You are no longer hiders and hunters. You are fighters. You're on your own, just you and your wits. Take out your fellow fighters, be the last one standing, and that sweet, sweet prize money is yours for the taking. He jumped up and down in excitement, hopping around the stage again as he jumped over the bodies of that night's executions. So do whatever you need to. Burn, maim, kill. Just make sure you're the last one left. He paused for a second, staring directly into the camera. He was so close, I could see the bright blue of his irises in the depth of the mask. Oh, and one other thing. Absolutely no team-ups. This is supposed to be a free-for-all after all. That wouldn't be in the spirit of the game. As he spoke, I couldn't help but feel like that was aimed at me. Well, that's all for tonight, folks. It's bye for now, but I wish you all the best of luck. Happy hunting. Adieu. Hey guys, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I really appreciate each and every one of you watching. I hope you'll consider liking and subscribing. If you enjoyed this story, please feel free to check out my other videos for more original horror content. You can also find published versions of my stories on Amazon. I've popped a link in the description. Check it out if you enjoyed my work. Thanks again for listening. Feel free to comment your own terrifying experiences below. Until our next descent into the darkness, remember, it's never just a story.